So, Mark, we're officially live on
This,
what, the River City Rundown?
yeah, I think we're finally established as a show. So this is like this.
Right.
I feel like we are about to, grab the shovel and throw some dirt, in the air to signify our building of the River City Rundown. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
I love it. Let me go get a bottle of champagne and I'll smash it over my desk. So,
Only fitting.
I mean, right. So, for people who are probably not going to see this live, but the goal of what we're doing, and thank you, Mark, for jumping in on my crazy idea that I threw at you. But we thought it'd be really cool to create a kind of a show based around St. Louis and our running scene and what people are doing, what races are going on, and just kind of check in and Mark and I give our perspectives. Me coming from more of the trail side, and Mark obviously being the road runner and Mr. St. Louis of running. We thought it'd be fun to be able to like banter back and forth about what's going on and just share perspectives of races that had happened or are coming up, or just kind of general information that we feel like it's necessary to get out there for everybody and give a platform for people to hopefully in the future join us live and interact and whatnot. So that in a nutshell is River City Rundown, right?
I think you right on the dot right there. That's everything we're looking for. And Ryan to this is that there's differences between both of us in terms of our specialties are and what trails and roads, but I think it's going to be on what's going on your side. And I'll be honest, there's kind of the blinders on the road side for myself. So I need that kind of perspective, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of share some things maybe that will be eye-opening to you on end.
Oh, you've got years, my friend, of eye-opening to provide me. Yeah, maybe that's kind of a good segue to give a little background for both of us. I know more people are going to know a lot more about you because you are Mr. St. Louis of running, and I'm going to keep tagging that. But just give a little background on myself. My wife, Jamie, created a Facebook group almost about 5 years ago. And that's when I got involved in running, and I jumped in, and we converted that Facebook group to Art City Run Club. And through that, gosh, man, our world has just completely changed, and we've been immersed in the running scene like since day one, with creating group run initially, and then starting to add some events in on our side, and just trying to build a really positive community through Art City. And as we kind of talked about earlier, like I started road running, but then hit a trail run, and my life was over. I immediately fell in love with trail running, and that's kind of where my passion lies with the trail and ultra world. But our run club encompasses everything. So I guess one of the other reasons why we started this too is because we're both injured, right? We needed an outlet. But yeah, so I am now an injured trail runner who's recovering from back surgery, but that's a little bit of background on my side. So Mark, if you want to, yours might take 15, 20 minutes.
No, not at all. Not at all. I just want everybody to understand at home that whatever Ryan says is a paid advertisement. My family has given him a lot of money to speak kind words about me. But my background with the sport's just a little bit different in the sense that, I've been doing this for 15 years. I started in middle school. I was a basketball player who really wanted to walk on at a Division I basketball school at some point. I don't know if a lot of eighth graders have that goal in mind of being a walk on, but that was kind of the goal, to stand on the side of the bench and pump people up. And
see, mine was, I just assumed North Carolina was going to recruit me. in 8th grade when I was
yeah,
when I was 5'4" and 96 pounds.
I mean, in all fairness, Tyler Hansborough came out of the St. Louis area. He came out of Poplar Bluff, so you just
Totally.
you never know. And so when I realized that basketball probably wasn't going to be my avenue, my brother Mike, who's my inspiration at the time, he was a cross country track and field runner, a standout runner at our high school. He ended up actually running in college for a really competitive, actually Division III school. Got to see him, just love the sport and all the friendships and everything that kind of came out of it. And I always tell people, like, I was probably the only kid in 8th grade when I first started running that like thought I needed to be on the team because I really wanted to wear short shorts. I just thought it was so cool because my brother and all his friends wore split shorts, so that was something that was exciting for me, just in terms of, just being a part of the sport. And from there, I ran in high school, ended up running for a small Division I school named Rider University for a year. But I actually had a little bit of a different path back to running after my college kind of running was over. Ended up failing out of school, losing that opportunity to compete. And a lot of it was just based on the fact that I didn't really agree with the fact that you had to go to school to participate in sports. And I learned that pretty quick, that if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to stay around as long as you want to. So I learned a lot of lessons that first year and ended up going on and running, just with a group here in St. Louis when I got back to St. Louis. And that's when I actually started working for Big River Running Company. So for those of you from St. Louis watching this show, I worked for Big River for close to 5 years. And that was kind of my avenue back to the sport. So in that process, started putting on charity running events, did their high school camps, and start coaching at Ladue High School, start coaching the youth programs at Ladue and Clayton, really just probably try to just do whatever I could with the sport. And then ended up obviously starting a coaching business. And so that's my path to where we're at. But I will say this, because I want to put this as a highlight for those of you listening. Ryan and Jamie are so inspiring to me, because I always felt like I knew every single athlete runner in this town. And all of a sudden I started seeing on social media this like really cool running group with all these people that I didn't really know. And then I realized that the ringleaders of this group were two people that like seemed so fun. They were young, energetic. They loved the sport. And I had no idea who they were. And I was like, I know everybody in this town when it comes to running. And I did not. So to this day, I always say that they're like low key, the most important pieces to our community, because they found a way to rise in a very, St. Louis political, affiliated town of running. And they created their own circle and own group and just showed what's possible when you can kind of take passion and energy and put it all into one. So I'm just proud to be affiliated with you guys.
Well, I appreciate all of that, and especially the young part, because little did you know that we were, 30, 35, 34-year-old parents that came out of nowhere, I guess.
Minor details.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, it gives a little background for the people who don't know either of us, and who may be watching this in the future. And the cool thing that's happening, I think the really cool thing about St. Louis running scene is that we have made that connection, and that connection came to us through Go St. Louis, which ironically is going to be one of the things we kind of, not specifically this race, but Go St. Louis, but at the Halloween race, when we all kind of met getting our pies after running the 10K that year, and friendships blossom from there. And it's been really fun to connect and kind of grow into the sport and have you as a support system. And here we are now, right? Kind of jumping into this new world where hopefully we're going to be able to provide more content to the community. And that's kind of the goal here for us, is just to have fun and grow the community more and share and hopefully open more doors for other people too, and other races and events, and we'll see where it goes, right?
I love it. And I love just the fact that, it's kind of our opportunity to per se be our ESPN of the St. Louis running community. And, Ryan and I joked about this is even if like we have one person that views it and it's alternating between my mom or Jamie, we know that it was a while because we got to talk about running in St. Louis and these different stuff. So that's what I'm most excited about. But, diving into what's been going on, Ryan, because it's a lot that's happening on the racing front, which is great news because
huge.
This is huge. I mean, this is why I'm so excited to jump on here with you. Like when we first talked about this, I was like, this sounds like a great idea, but we're going to need to make up some names and some stats because there's not a lot going on. And, Go St. Louis, we got to really give them a lot of credit for executing a race and putting something on during a pandemic. And they are one of the organizations in town that took that lead and made that happen. And I know that was something that was not easily done. But on the trail side, I know there's been several stuff that's been happening. I think it's good that we give awareness to it. So a really, a quick rundown, Ryan, you want to go through some of these most recent events, at least in your lay of the land on the trails and ultra sides that you think we need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, we're the weird thing with road racing versus trail racing is it's everything got shut down, right? But some of these trail events were still able to kind of to pull through and or come back a little bit earlier, just with the nature of the trail races being so much smaller events, and typically once you're out on the trails, it spreads out pretty far, and the races are just smaller as a whole. So we've had a few coming back, but we have a lot coming up, right? So just to kind of touch on this past weekend, and it was actually my first 50K, the Ozark Foothills 50K. That was kind of the first, I would say, big local race that came back, and it's a race that has grown too. It started off as a 50K, 25K. And now, I mean, gosh, this year had a 100-mile, had a 50-mile, 50K morning, 50K night, 25K marathon. I mean, and it was a much smaller event than it probably will be after we kind of loosen up a little bit, or vaccinations. Maybe next year it's even going to be bigger in terms of participation numbers. But had a great turnout, and COVID protocols all in place. Masks for the volunteers. Runners, when they went out, could take their masks down, but when they came in, they were, when they weren't getting stuff, the masked up. And unfortunately, and I'm sure you're going to speak to this a little bit with Go St. Louis too this past weekend. I mean, the weather was just awful. I mean, so and I went out there for a little bit just to run a little loop and to see a few people out there before Jamie, my wife, went out to crew and pace one of your athletes, or Jamie's athletes, Jeff Bell, who was running his first 100. And I mean, it's a tough course out there in Greensfelder. That's where the races takes place. It's not an easy course to begin with, and then add Friday night, rain midweek, and then Friday night that rain, and then all the way into Saturday morning it rained the whole time starting that race, and wind. And I mean, the trail, the people at the marathon having to run in that wind, that's awful, right? I mean, it's terrible. But then you couple that with rocks and roots and mud and leaves, and people at Foothills this weekend didn't stand a chance, and they were grinding and getting after it. I mean, you're talking a race where, for the 50K, you're starting to see times out there in the low 4 hours, which is screaming for a 50K with 4,000 foot of elevation, right? On the trail sides, that's fast. And most of the finishing times were over 5 hours, which isn't uncommon. I mean, there's some people had some really great performances in their first kind of 50Ks out there, which is awesome too. But the general, like, I would say that your standard trail running crew that does the ultra, their times were an hour slower or 2 hours slower than they thought they were going to be. and just with the roots and mud and all that, it's brutal out there. But something that I thought was really cool that came out of the race, a couple of finishes that I wanted to talk on. I mean, there was 35 people that entered the 100-mile, only 7 finished. And that's just conditions. I mean, you know, to be out there grinding in that mud for that long. I mean, imagine for the road runners who don't know much about the trail scene. I mean, it's literally like running, and I mean, think about trying to run up a muddy hill and you're just like, you're swimming, right? I mean, now imagine doing that for 100 miles, because that's what most people were doing. So some of these times for the 100-milers were insane given the conditions, but that's a reason why you're only seeing 7 people finish an event like that, because, you know, to be out there and grind for potentially 34 hours is, you know, you can only do it so much before is the risk worth the reward, right? And then, you know, you have, this is something that is also kind of wild, and I think for the road runners, they're gonna be like, holy cow. The last 3 finishers for the 50-mile were like 6 minutes before 19 hours. So they were out there for nearly 19 hours going 50 miles. That is a long time to be grinding for a 50-mile race. You know, most 50-mile races, the cutoff's like 16 hours. I think this was extended just because you had 100-milers out there. But, you know, imagine being out there for 19 hours when typically a race would end at that distance, or 14 or 15 hours, you know. Just that's a crazy will to get done. And it's something that I think, you know, on the trail side, I think a lot of road people don't maybe understand this as much, because cutoffs are so much stricter on the road. And it's kind of neat on the trail side, you know, not even necessarily like 50-mile races, but even shorter distance races, people get a bigger time window to complete a distance that they want to complete that maybe they can on the roadside sometimes. So it's cool to see this, like those 19-hour finishes. If it was a 16-hour cutoff, you're going to have 3 people who didn't finish 50 miles, you know? So it's really neat to see that. And then just a couple really cool things. And this is more like, I want to know who these people are, because it kind of speaks to me and Jamie. But the Nathaniel and Lauren Buckeye, 50K couple that both took first place. Nathaniel, his time. Do you know this name at all, Mark? Nathaniel Buckeye?
No, I've never heard it.
Okay,
at all.
And they may be from out of town.
Okay,
but the dude ran like 4 hours and 19 minutes on a 50K in that mud, which is just
crazy.
It's bonkers. And his wife, I think she placed, you know, top 10 overall, and her time was screaming too. So whoever they are, like, what a power couple, you know, Jesus. And then we had another badass couple, and I think they are local, Nicole and Christopher Sandifer. I know Nicole's an ACRC. I don't know if Chris is. I don't know if you know that name at all. His 25K time was screaming too. She got second place female in the 25K. They both absolutely went crush down. And definitely people I want to get out and run with whenever I'm healed. And then I think the one that kind of transitions us from road to trail a little more, that ran this race, which is a huge name in the sport, and it's really cool that she's in our community now. She's in St. Louis, is Tina Muir, which I've had ironically, you know, I messaged with her on Instagram, and super nice. And then my crippled butt was walking down Grant's Trail and ran into her while she was out there, and we got to chat for a little bit. She's so nice, an amazing ambassador for the sport, especially when it comes to the women of the sport. I mean, her story is wild, and you can just Google her name and listen to like 9,000 podcasts, or her own podcast, which is great. But Tina's first ever trail race, and I don't know if she'll ever watch this, but if she does, I think she'll be okay with me telling this story. But I sent her a message on Instagram the night before and said, hey, just a heads up, because I knew it was her first trail race, and she's been hitting the trails a lot, but I said the conditions are awful. So, whatever trail shoes you have that have the deepest lugs, like, you definitely want to be using those tomorrow to get some good grip out there. And she was like, yeah, I assume. Thank you so much. And she responded back and said, I'm a rookie. What are lugs? So I had to explain to her like what the lug difference in your trail shoe is, and but I don't think it would have mattered, Mark. She is an absolute animal, and she probably would have gotten first place overall. I mean, first place overall in the marathon, her first trail marathon, by like 30 something minutes. Just an absolute badass. So that's kind of a breakdown. I mean, there's some cool other stories out there. I mean, it was neat to be following Jeff Bell, like I said, one of Jamie's athletes, and his first 100-miler. Dude worked his butt off, and it's a shame that the conditions were so crappy, but that's what you get we play an outside sport, right? And, when you play that sport on trails, the roads, if it's wet and windy, it sucks, but at least it's a little more manageable. But when you get out in the trails, if you sign up for an April race in St. Louis, who knows what you're going to get? I mean, and we know that on the road side too, but
it's tough. Yeah, it's a difficult thing because I think you train for a race, and in your head while you're training, you're preparing in some sense for the worst of conditions, but realistically you're eyeing this one date this whole time, and there's this expectation that it's going to be kind of end all be all, in your head you make it out to be, and then you get there and you're thrown with such a curveball that it totally, has to make you reframe the way that you're doing it. And I just give so much respect to anybody that was out there racing, this past weekend. And I can tell you this, like, I've stood at enough track meets and cross country meets to know that I'm very happy when I leave a track meet, at 3 or 4 p.m. opposed to, 1, 2 a.m. So
right.
That's a lot of credit for you guys to be out there. I still think about that, when you're going to bed, you realize that there's people still running. You're like, I feel great in my bed right now.
Oh, we're gonna break that. We're gonna get you out to an ultra. Just the crew. I haven't broken you down to run one yet, but just the crew and pace.
Perhaps we'll have to do a live stream at one of these, just to get people fired up. Well, I did want to mention, because I don't know Tina super well, but obviously you've met her a few times and know of her through the community, and have done my research and seen, obviously what she's done on a more national front, actually global front. Right. She has a presence that is not just, here in the United States, which is incredible. But just giving her credit, she's, she was a world championship runner for her native land, and she'd run I believe 2:36 in the marathon, and she's just an incredible athlete herself, and she has a very established podcast. That's where I think a lot of people had found her, but also her newsletter. So if you're ever kind of looking for some inspiration and you're learning, the whole cool thing with her is like she only brings on content that she thinks is like super valuable to her clients per se, or her viewers, right, and things like that. And I just have a lot of respect for how she's doing things. So just kind of wanted to point that out for everybody out there.
No, completely agree. Yeah, she's got a great, what is really neat about her too is she stopped the sport. Like she ran that 2:36 and then quit. Right. I think that was her PR, like her last race, and quit because of, kind of what the sport was doing to her body. And she wanted to have a family in the future. And I mean, there's not too many people who can be at their prime and drop out of the sport. But, look at her now. She's crushing trail marathons, having fun, and she has a family. So I think she's doing, and has an amazing podcast. I think she's doing pretty well.
The ultimate pivot, I would say. Well, no.
Oh my gosh, right?
It's awesome hearing that. I appreciate the report on that side of things. And I'm looking forward in the coming weeks learning more about the trail side and all awesome people. And yeah, shout out to Jeff Bell, who is a Spewak training athlete. He works with obviously Ryan's wife, Jamie, who does an amazing job. She's an incredible coach. Jeff is just a really good dude. He's got an amazing energy. He makes everybody else around him better, and we're just so lucky to have him part of our community. And I know he's a little bit bummed out that it didn't turn out the way that maybe you kind of been hoping for, but I also know that there's a lot of people who are just really impressed with, what he did on that day. So kudos to you, Jeff, if you're out there listening, and if not, no worries. We can all just give you praise.
Yeah.
Well, I can jump in on some of the roadside.
Yeah. Jump in. Because I told you the other day, I saw results and, the people in the community that I know, but I tried to play as dumb as possible so that I could get the first hand from you.
Yeah, no. I appreciate it. And, I call myself a half expert because I would say that to really understand, even deeper thoughts, you have to be a really, really big track nerd, which hopefully I'm going to get better at doing some more research and learning more about some of these people that, we don't just have a direct tie with. But the road side of things, I mean, I just want to point out that I think like road runners can get super greedy when it comes to expectations on conditions and things like that. And a year ago, we would have all begged for the worst case scenario of weather event because we're living through a pandemic. And at that period of time, we're living through a pandemic plus not having any events. So like I said, I just want to give the credit to Go St. Louis for doing that. And I hope that for everybody kind of at home that participated, that maybe had a sour experience because of the weather, they can remind themselves that hey, they got to participate in this, which was not something that they were going to be able to do in the first place, until this was kind of put together. So kudos to that team. But
totally,
I'll say this: it was a tough day. And I know I'm not going to get a lot of sympathy from the crew on your side, but I can say that when you're trying to run really fast and especially in these shorter distance races, comparative to what your distance, it's difficult because you're asking your body to go 100%. And then when you have these conditions kind of in front of you, it just sucks the energy out of you. So, I use my example, my athletes, they started that race and they really kind of, were dealt with some mental struggles from the beginning. Like, how am I going to handle this for another, 13 miles or 26 miles for that case? So I think that was a big piece of it, was just both days. The wind was killer. Saturday had obviously a lot of the rain. That was kind of the big problem that a lot of people kind of faced: the rain, the wet roads, the conditions. You're running right on the Mississippi River. I do not know how Lewis and Clark, were able to pull that off and stay afloat and not drown, because those that was just half of what they dealt with.
Right.
But the Go St. Louis, from the half and full perspective, like I said, the conditions just weren't fantastic on both ends, but you did see a lot of great performances come out of it. And I do want to highlight, especially on the half side of things, the Go St. Louis racing team at this point right now. They had some incredible performances. Caleb Emberton, who is a standout runner in St. Louis, he threw down a 1:11 half marathon on that course, which is a challenge in itself. Cass Dater was right behind there in a 1:13. Travis Lavin coming back to St. Louis, who I believe has participated in some ultras and things like that. Yeah, so he kind of made a little bit of a mark with a 1:13 on that end of things. And there were several great performances. I mean, I want to say that all the way through the top, well over the top 10 was all under 120. And on that day, that's not easy at all. The first female that I'm seeing on here, I actually don't know her, but Tamara Sanchez Ortiz, I don't know if Sarah Winter is the one that I'm picking up here. She ran a 122, which is wicked fast on that day. And there were several others, like Allie Wayne, a friend of mine. She threw down a 124 half marathon. So all that was exciting. My athletes, obviously, were in the mix as well. We had several PRs across the board on the half side, which was a lot of fun. When you're coaching athletes for these kind of events, you're hoping that they're going to be able to reach some type of goal on race day. So that was cool kind of to see that. So that was what I saw from the half perspective. The full marathon.
Question there for you, Mark. Just something that just kind of popped in my head. Like you spoke about the conditions and, obviously, like everyone doing Ozark Foothills and Go leading into the weekend, when Friday came and the weather changed, I mean, everyone's going in bummed out, right? I mean, you know that it's going to be a tougher day. But my question, like how many of your athletes, and just speaking with them afterwards, were still just like so fired up to be racing, just because racing was back? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. It was kind of bittersweet because it was a race and it wasn't a race. A normal race, you're not going to start, staggered, and that's not Lewis's fault by any means. That's the reality that we're in to actually execute a safe event at this point. But that's, I think to a lot of like the real road racers, that's not really a race because you're running basically a time trial by yourself. With that said, you have the component of, there's the elements of seeing people on the course. There's fans, there's perspective of just having a little bit more fanfare than you would be if you're just signed up, to run something virtual and the only body cheering you on is your son at the finish line with a. So there was that I think was good, but I also think that like to your point, I think just having something that was like concrete on a schedule motivated people. And I had some athletes that definitely were motivated by the event, but kind of shell shocked when they got there because they don't think they really realized this is what the reality was going to be. It's a lot of kind of expecting something. You're wanting something out of it that you just can't get out of it. But I think for those who came in it with the mindset of a very healthy kind of approach, like this is what it's going to be. I'm just grateful to be out here. Then those people almost surpass their expectations because they're like, wow, this is even better than I thought it would be. Exactly. So I'd say that. But I mean,
that's interesting because, so on the trail side, right? Like even with staggered starts, I mean, you could have somebody 30 seconds up on you and you don't see them. So I haven't thought about it like, and I haven't run a road race in a while, but I mean, there's a big part of it. You're hanging on to somebody, right? You're running, maybe not talking because you're running a lot faster, but like you're hanging with a group or a pack or with someone. And when that isn't there and you don't necessarily know like how fast your competition is going around you because it's staggered. Yeah, I could see that makes it a lot harder to run a race that you're used to.
And I don't want to take anything away from like the marathoners because I don't want to say that it was easier for them, but I do think as the distance goes up, it's easier to have the discipline to run by yourself because in training you're asked to do a lot of the legwork by yourself. In a half marathon, it's short enough that it's a competition, where in a marathon, unless you're top 5 at the Boston Marathon, the Olympic trials, and you're trying to qualify for a spot, you're not necessarily racing because you're running your race plan and hoping that it evolves. In a lot of ways, the half marathon is for that. But more than anything, when the marathon, ultra marathon distances, it's a battle between you and yourself. And if you're good enough, yes, there's competition and there's definitely that component. But if you watch like the end of these elite marathons, like, you might see somebody out kick somebody, but it wasn't like, that out kick is that person gave it all their all for 25 miles and the wheels came off and you just happened to be the person that had a little bit left, in the bank to be able to do that. So the marathon, I'd say, is like, to answer your question, those athletes had better days. With that said, it was harder in Illinois than it was in Missouri. So the beginning of this course went into Illinois and then it came back. And there was some
with the wind.
And there was some rough terrain too. So it wasn't like you were just running on, kind of the normal surface that you saw the rest of the race, asphalt. The surface was actually, I forget what it was. I want to say it was, you'll laugh at us, but it was, so maybe some type of dirt or trail substance for them. But, for a marathon, I think about a guy like Mike Aiken. He wins the race. He runs a 2:33 marathon, which for those of you guys trying to like conceptualize what that is, that's like 5:50 pace, 5:45 pace for a marathon. So 5:45 miles. And he was running that fast on that terrain is incredible. And I think that was a PR for him.
Wow.
So look at that.
He PR'd. Wow. I mean, that's something.
Dad's strength is just out of the water. But I mean, we saw that across the board. Like, I think a lot of the marathoners had some good days, like even just looking at the top field to it. And, one of ours, Roger Moore, who's running with Spewak trains with Coach Jason Holroyd, but he also trains with a lot of these groups in St. Louis. I know is a popular figure with you guys, with Arch City and everything you guys are doing. He was under 3 hours and 2:56,
Right.
and that wasn't even that wasn't even. I want to say, looking just at the results, I mean, he wasn't even top 10 with that time. So it was competitive. It was a competitive. Oh, I guess he was. He might. Yeah, he's 14th overall with a 2:56.33. Incredible. So,
and he is hashtag shirts are for work. He's strong in the movement.
But,
and Roger has a 100-miler in October. So, Roger's one of those transition badasses in our community. He can kind of do it all.
He's definitely one, but I mean, just looking just to give you guys some perspective. I mean, Jake Peel runs a 2:37, which is just 6 flat. Zach Colts runs a 2:42, which is 6:12 pace. Michael Horn and Mohammed Taha. I don't want to mess up your last name if you're listening, but he ends up running 2:40. They were well under 2:45. Nick Burkle, who I don't know if you guys are familiar with that name or not, but he's a popular guy on Strava. Always super. Giving those kudos and congratulations.
Oh, nice.
John Yacht, though, I got to give a special shout out to him because what is this?
That guy's a badass.
Yeah, probably his 5,000th, marathon of his career, and he was doing it, out there like it was no problem. I saw him in mile 22. He looked great doing that. But on the female side of things, we did see Jackie Pirtle Hall, who is a several-time Olympic trial athlete here from St. Louis. She was out there. She had a very strong race of 3:07. I'm not familiar with what she's been doing in terms of her training. But I do know that running a 3:07 at any point in any of your guys' career is a very successful result.
And she just, I mean, at the Olympic trials, she broke her leg or fractured her leg.
Something like that.
Insane. And then she ran Tunnel Hill. When did she? I'm trying to think when she ran Tunnel Hill 50 this year, and I don't know if she broke the course record, but her time was insane. So Jackie Pirtle Hall is a bad woman, and she's a legend. Bad. Oh my gosh, and she's a legend on the trails too. I remember, not to go take too much away from your road breakdown.
I know we were on a roll. We were on a roll with the roadside. Now we're back in the trails.
But so my first trail race was Quivering Quads 2, 8 mile, and Drew Webster won it, and that guy's an animal. And if Drew watches or listens to this, come back. We want you back. Get back to running. But Drew. Do both of them. I mean, he set the course record that day, and Jackie was like 2 or 3 minutes behind him, and she finished second. She's a freaking animal on roads and trails.
And she has a very storied career just in terms of her own running. She was a successful college runner. She ended up, obviously running several years, where she was very, very competitive on the road. She still is very competitive on the roads and trails. But her life focus now seems to, have a lot more to her life than just running. She's a loving mother. Right. She's super devoted, passionate about her family. On top of it, she is a high school cross country coach. I believe she was coaching over at Liberty. So she's really ingrained with the sport, but I think what always is really just totally blown me away with her is just how personable she is, but how she is just so excited for everybody in the running community. And so it's very rare that you see somebody who wins the race that wants to stick around really just to cheer everybody else on. So, kudos to her.
It's the trail in her, my man.
She was like this before the trails.
Okay.
Fair
enough.
Maybe she took that attitude to the trails, to give you guys a little bit more, energy that you guys didn't have. But
if there's one thing we're going to get out of this a year from now, is we're going to convert all of the elite road people into the people that stick around and watch everyone on the road races finishes. We're going to make that a St. Louis thing.
It is something that I wish, regardless if this was brought up in a road rivalry, because I feel like from a stubborn perspective, I just have to kind of say no to that. But I agree with the concept of being better being more supportive. I think that's something the road community can learn a lot more from the trails. And we've talked about this. I think there's a culture with roads that you don't really want to stick around. It's harder sometimes to stick around where there's more of a culture of kind of hanging out and really having it as a festival. So I agree with you in that sense. And I do want to mention, I don't want to say her last name wrong, so I apologize if this is not how you say it, but it's Maggie Yount, and she did win the Go St. Louis Marathon. She won that the last time that we had a marathon here in St. Louis in 2019. Maggie's story,
back to back.
Yeah, her twin sister Maureen Conley. You guys might know Maureen. She's in the St. Louis area. Her husband is Bill McCoy, who runs a lot with some of these big groups. He's an ultra runner. Had trained with Jamie at one point too. Yeah. Great people there. Super passionate. Well, Maureen and Maggie, they were just absolute studs. High school runners and out of the area, and college runners, and very legendary. Like anybody a little bit before my era. Anybody talks about those sisters, they're like at Maryville and everything. They're like, those girls can run. They were fast, and they still are fast, very, very fast. But Maggie has emerged back in the St. Louis road running scene every spring. You know, she comes back and wins this race. So I've never met you, Maggie, but if I ever do get to meet you in person, I've met your sister. I'd love to meet you at some point and just tell you congratulations and races, because it's. I mean, I want to say, let's just get her official result just so I don't mess it up. I think she was right under 3 hours. I mean, she was 2:59:23 on that day. So just overall,
and back to back wins.
Yeah. So Ryan, you would remember that out of 2019. She was a part of that race. So just incredible all around. I mean, you look at the depth of this field. I mean, and you see. Even just looking at I'm just looking, down here, the nerd in me loves kind of just shuffling through. But I mean, 35th place was a 3:15. And I can tell you from that day, 3:15 on the female side will win some races. Obviously, granted, the bigger races are small, but just kind of puts in perspective. I mean, I want to give a kudos to the depth of our community, and it shows that people are still training. And I think from the road and trail side of things, it's exciting to hear both of these reports, because it's showing that we have a healthy state of racing at this point. And that was kind of, I think, the worry of a lot of people, was that the pandemic was going to kind of take the steam out of runners. And I think it's been the opposite. I think it's given us more fuel and things like that. So
I completely agree.
Kind of what's the future kind of coming up in terms of some races, Ryan? Do you have any perspective on the roads that you want to share?
No, I mean, being a part of Go for a short stint, I love that they're using the Greenway. I do think that section of the Greenway is a little rough, having run it myself. But the fact that they're adding in the Greenways into the part of the marathon, I think is such a great play. And that's being said from a standpoint of our city, not our running community, but our city and the businesses, they do not support the marathon
at all
the way a lot of other cities do. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard it is for Go to put on a route. That's something maybe we can chat about later, but it's
a whole episode on
that. a lot of people who run the races don't realize how difficult it is to get a good course together. So, from my standpoint, I think Go using more of the Greenways in their marathon is just a great way to maybe get the city more around it, because we're not taking up the streets where they don't want us to be, which is unfortunate.
It is.
Well, I do love that they used it. No, that's the only thing I want to add to it. I really think it was a good call.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because, just on a quick little short tangent, I think it is important to know that the course that, Mona puts together is the best course that she can put together that's approved. And so she can't say this, because she can't say it because it will get her, in trouble, but I can say it, to hell with anybody who criticizes, and backseat quarterbacks, what you think streets you should run down. Because if you went through the city department and saw what, what options that they had, you would be probably you wouldn't even come up with a fraction of what she's been able to put together, because you'd be like, oh, we're going to turn on there. We're going to turn on there. And one of the most impressive things I saw them do was one year there was a suspicious package at the starting line of the 5K. I think it was 2016, 2017. I was running the 5K that day, and we were stalled for like 20 minutes. And what they were doing in that process was not only getting the FBI and everybody searching this course, but they were in the moment also planning a new race route for this 5K on the dot. So there's a lot of things that they can't do, but I agree with you that using the greenways could be an effective way to get people excited about running in St. Louis, and perhaps they'll get people. But we're a baseball town. I'm a big baseball fan. I understand it, and I know it kind of falls in line with Cardinal weekend, but hopefully for kind of future events we can get some steam. It's a only healthy thing for our community. So I know we're sorry, we're kind of running short on time.
No, you're good. I mean, it's all good. Well, I think we're probably these things are going to just be what they are. They could be 5 minutes long or 45. What are we at?
Sure.
Yeah.
Real fast. You want to run? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just on the trail side, and Mark, you may know more of what is coming up on the road with some of your athletes, but this weekend we have Double Chub coming up. So 25K, 50K. It is the OG original kind of ultra of the area, right? Double Chub's been going on for 20 years or something. So I mean, it's kind of the classic. It'll be a fun weekend out there. It is definitely an abbreviated course because of COVID protocols and whatnot. So it's going to be more or less a self-supported 50K with little aid station work. So the runners out there, they got a tough course ahead of them. And then coming up early May, Trail of Four Winds is a Lake of the Ozarks 25K, which is put on by John Shelby, he's also helped with Go St. Louis races in the past. I don't know if he still is, but John's a great ambassador of the sport down there, and that is a fun and great race at the Lake of the Ozarks. And then we have another Slugs, which is who put on Double Chub Classic, which is the Berryman Marathon and 50 miler in the middle of May. But I won't touch too much on that because we'll probably hit that on our next episode. But yeah, those are the kind of three big ones coming up in the trail side over the next month. Yeah, no, it's cool just hearing that there's things for people to look forward to, and shout out to John Shepard and their crew over at the Double Chub. I mean, that's a event. Is that the race you get a belt buckle, right? If you can cross that finish line. I think there's some cool awards that you can kind of get through that. So it's always good Chub puns on Strava too. No, that's what I'm looking forward to most. Well, on the road side of things, you got to give a credit to Fleet Feet and Big River Running Company, because they've been troopers throughout this entire process. I mean, Fleet Feet has done an amazing job just pivoting and helping St. Louis Track Club get a lot of their events out this last winter. Right. Big River, Matt and Tom have done an awesome job with helping these organizations, who maybe don't necessarily, have the ability to be like Go St. Louis and other ones to have some of these bigger events, but they've been able to pivot and do some stuff. So kudos to both of those crews. But the races that are really sticking out to me, like in mine, there's actually, if you're on the road side of things, you can go to Big River's website. You can go to Fleet Feet's website. There is a race calendar. There are things that are out there. So, it's kind of the normal state of things where, it's kind of hit or miss. You can sometimes find the best course and best, giveaways at, your local charity, church 5K. Right. And there are plenty of them. Yeah, exactly. I looked. Yeah. So there's all that, on that side of things. But the ones that really kind of come to my mind is Gateway Resiliency Run is coming up. This was virtual last year. Big River, I think, they put it on in conjunction with somebody else, but they put it on with the Gateway Resiliency Fund, a nonprofit here in St. Louis that does a lot of good work. So that's one that kind of pops up to me. There is the Ferguson Twilight Run, which is a really popular event here in St. Louis, out of North County. Got to give a shout out to Dwayne James, the race director. He's awesome dude, and that event has been, I think, 11 years now. Their 10th anniversary was last year or the year before. I could be wrong. No, 10 years. Sorry, it was 2 years ago. My apologies. It was they just added a 10-mile option to it. So that's a great race. You can
drink beer, drink chocolate milk. That's actually what I like most is their chocolate milk that's there. They got a live band, they got a lot of different stuff that you can do. It's a night race, and it's at Ferguson, and it highlights a really cool part of the town and the community that, that definitely needs, the positive attention that event brings it. So I definitely recommend kind of looking into that one and seeing, if that fits your calendar. And then obviously, got to give a shout out to Matt Helbig and his crew on the Macklin Mile. Then all of us are getting on the roadside. It will be our first opportunity to, I think, really feel connected again to the road racing scene. Not that Go St. Louis didn't give that to us, but I just think that Macklin Mile might be, being on the same course, hopefully this year and all that different stuff, it'll be good for that. So that's what we're looking for on the horizon of the road scene. And I'm fired up. If you can't tell, it only helps my profession to have some stuff that I can convince to sign up for. I feel bad. I just tried to get my clients to keep signing up for the Spewak training virtual events, and I think they're about to kill me if I ask them to sign up.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe touch on virtual events next week, because that's something I do want to talk about at some point. Because I don't think they're gone, but it'll be interesting to see how they interplay with events coming back. So maybe we'll have to touch on that next episode. But we're at 50 minutes, man.
Yeah, I'm at 5% on my phone and my computer. So this is awesome. So fun.
Let's call it there. I have no. So I looked at my little eye thing, and it says there's 5 people watching, and it says 5 on Ryan Maher's Facebook. So I don't know if that's just like 5 of me.
No, I think it streams your link that you put out there. So 5 people are watching your link. So maybe we encourage people to share the link with their friends. So in the future, if you're listening and you're like, dude, 5 people, you guys are steady. You haven't turned off yet. You might do it right now. But if you felt like there was anything that you connected with, we would really appreciate it if you just put a share to a friend next week or the week after. And Ryan and we're still learning this. Like, man, I'm cutting you off half the time. I think both of us we're both kind of alpha males. So we both kind of have a host mentality. So I'm definitely going to have to learn to keep my mouth a bit more.
Me too. But honestly, as long as there's not a guest on and we're just talking over each other every once in a while. Exactly. But I am going to put this out on podcast format too. So, people can listen to it post or on their runs. We'll do the live stream just because we want to see each other's faces when we're talking to each other, and hopefully we'll have some guests on in the future. But, going forward, we will send out an event for the next one. We're going to plan on the second Wednesday of the month as a kind of go forward date. Kind of around this 8:15, 8:20, 8:30 time. But we'll send event links out, and hopefully we will catch you guys on the next episode of the River City Rundown.
Yeah, right? You created it, and props to
girlfriend
Ryan. Just thank you for including me in this. This is Ryan's idea. He's the one that spearheaded this, and for us, it's just an awesome opportunity for us to talk about the sport we love, but for us to connect, more often. And I think that's something that we can all do more, hopefully, kind of moving forward, is keep the connection alive. The pandemic taught us that. So thank you so much, buddy. I'm looking
forward to
hearing what's next, and we'll see y'all next week.
Cool.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Later.